Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining Lakehead University's virtual speaker series. Just a little housekeeping before we start. Your audio and video is automatically disabled by default, and at no time is your video computer screen accessible by the moderator, presenters, or others taking part. Also, just a friendly reminder that this webinar is being recorded. After the presentation, there'll be time for a Q&A, and if during the presentation you think of a question, you can send me a private message and I'll be sure to relay it at the end. As we begin today, I would like to acknowledge the original custodians of the land and pay my respects to the elders, past, present, and future, for they hold the memories, traditions, cultures, and hopes of Indigenous people. I would like to also recognize that our Thunder Bay campus and Aurelia campuses are on the traditional lands of some of this country's Indigenous people. In Thunder Bay, Lakehead University resides on the traditional lands of Fort Williams First Nations, signatory to the Robinson Superior Treaty of 1850. In Aurelia, Lakehead University resides on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe people and Alarama First Nations. We also acknowledge the history that many of these nations hold in these areas and look forward to the respectful relations with First Nations, Métis, and Inuit in spirit of reconciliation. Now it is my pleasure to introduce you today's speaker, Scott Kress. Scott graduated from Lakehead with a Bachelor of Science in Outdoor Recreation in 1993. He's a masterful storyteller, author, leadership and team building expert, and lifelong adventurer. Scott is the 51st Canadian to summit Mount Everest and the 18th Canadian to climb the highest peaks of each of the 7 continents. Take it away, Scott.
Great, thank you. I'm going to share my screen with everybody here, so just give me a second to get this set up. So great to be here and to be able to share my stories with you all today. Lakehead University meant a lot to me and has given me a lot and really put me on a path to where I am today. And I'm going to be sharing with you a presentation that I call Achieve the Outrageous, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a second. So I currently run a company in Southern Ontario called Summit Team Building, and we focus on building high performance teams and leaders and building high performance within individuals. I've been doing this for over 25 years now. We run programs throughout Canada and internationally as well. I was honored with an Alumni Achievement Award a few years ago from Lakehead, which was fantastic. My field is really of expertise is in leadership and team building, team performance. I've taught at several different universities in executive MBA and MBA programs, and have done a lot of international speaking and written books on team building and high performance leadership. Recently, I was honored with becoming a fellow of the Royal Canadian Geographic Society, recognizing the adventure and different work that I've done for geography and science in Canada. And I'm also a certified polar guide, one of only 33 polar guides in the world. These are people who take teams to the North Pole, the South Pole, Baffin Island, Greenland, places like that. So that's a little bit about me. This is a picture of myself on the summit of Mount Everest. I summited in 2008, and it was a great experience. And Everest has given a lot to me, and I try to give back to people by sharing my experience with them. Now, you heard I climbed the 7 summits, the highest peak on each of the 7 continents, plus I've traveled to the North and to the South Poles. And this has given me a great opportunity to explore the world, but in the process, you learn so much about yourself and teams and leadership. And so it ties in very well with the professional aspect of my life as well. So I'm going to be sharing a presentation with you today. And as a speaker, I always want to accomplish 3 things. One is to entertain, to share some stories with you that hopefully will be of interest to you. But I'm an educator. That's what I do on a day-to-day basis, working with corporate groups and leadership teams to help them to perform at a higher level. So I'm going to work in some different insights and learnings into my presentation, and hopefully there's some things that can connect with you at the same time. And then inspire. You know, we're always looking for presentations such as this to inspire us, to help us look at what's our next goal, what are we going to tackle next, how can we overcome our current challenges. And so hopefully there's some inspiration here as well. What I'm going to be talking to you about today is my expedition to the South Pole. Considered to be one of the hardest expeditions on the planet, because Antarctica is the most remote and one of the most rugged and isolated continents on our planet. Ashley Cherry Gerard, who wrote a great book called The Worst Journey in the World about Robert Scott's expedition to the South Pole in 1911. He wrote of polar exploration that it is at once the cleanest and most isolated way of having a bad time which has ever been devised. We often describe polar exploration as a sufferfest. It's just something that is so demanding and challenging and difficult, and you have to really work well together as a team and dig deep personally to achieve your goal. Now, as I was making my way towards the South Pole, I was thinking that, this is pretty outrageous what we're doing here. Very few people have ever done this. I'm the fourth Canadian to ever travel unsupported and unassisted from the coast of Antarctica to the South Pole. And so I was thinking, what is it that has allowed us to achieve something that, seems kind of unachievable in many ways? And so there's 7 points which I'll expand upon in this presentation. So if you want to achieve the outrageous, first you need to be willing to do what others are not willing to do. You need to know what's in it for me. Why are you doing it? Routine is critical in the preparation and in the execution of your goal. Emotional intelligence is critical in overcoming challenges and pressures and building high performance teams. You got to find the fun to keep focused on the positive. You need to build in recovery time so that you can continue to perform at a high level. And you need to build in celebration along the way that keeps people engaged and motivated and inspired. So as I go through my presentation, I'd like you to kind of reflect a little bit yourself as thinking about what do you need to do to achieve the outrageous for you, whatever outrageous happens to be for you, what goals you have for yourself, what challenges you're currently facing. So to achieve the outrageous, first of all, you need to be willing to do what others are not willing to do. If you look at anybody who has achieved anything special, whether this be in athletics or business or whatever, they have dug a little deeper, they've worked a little harder, they've sacrificed a little bit more, they've suffered a little bit more in some cases than some people are willing to do. But you have to do these things to get to these goals. I'm going to start off with a short video here that I shot while I was in Antarctica on my way to the South Pole. And it'll give you a bit of a sense of Antarctica, but then also will introduce this concept of doing what other people are not willing to do.
So we have just finished day 34. You can see in the background there, setting up camp. And good day. The terrain was pretty good today. We did 12.77 nautical miles, and we have just crossed into 88 degrees, which is pretty amazing. We are out of 87. 87 was the torture chamber. It was just horrible conditions for the most part, so it's good to be now into 88. Pretty soon will be 89, and they'll be heading 90 the South Pole. We probably have about 10 more days to go. So kind of hard to believe. Day 34. We've been going a long time across the land here, making our way towards the South Pole. And I just want to mention a little bit about what we call polar swagger down here. Polar swagger is kind of like street cred. This is polar swagger, half an inch of ice caked on your face. Right now it's pretty nice. This morning, not so nice. Howling wind like we've had for days and days and days. Really cold, just howling wind. And it just cakes the ice on your face. And, polar swagger basically means that you can do shit that other people aren't willing to do. Conditions that people would run for home, and you just keep on plugging through, because that's the only way we're going to get to the South Pole. Almost 1,000 kilometers, and you can't stay in your tent just because it's not a nice day. So you put on a couple extra layers, you throw on your goggles, and you push off into the wind, and you just ski for 8 hours, and then you get to camp, set it up, and then you get ready to go. So like I said, we're probably 10 days away from the South Pole at this point. Everybody's doing well. Everybody got some aches and moans and bruises and blisters and stuff, but everybody's doing well, making good time.
So this gives you a bit of a feel for what we're looking to do and the challenges that we face along the way. And then you got to dig deep. I'm going down to Antarctica with 3 other friends, Ryan, Katrina, and Paul. And what we do is we fly from Canada down to the bottom of South America into Punta Arenas, Chile. And from Punta Arenas, we're going to fly over to Antarctica. And then we will get to our starting point, which is on the Ronne ice shelf out there by Berkner Islands. And then we will travel towards the South Pole from there. So to give you a sense of what we're doing, from our drop-off point at the coast of Antarctica, we'll have almost 1,000 kilometers to travel to get to the South Pole. We're going to plan for about 50 days of travel. No resting along the way, no showers along the way, no warm beds along the way. We're going to do it the hard way. You can make things easy today by modern technologies, using snowmobiles or having airdrops and different things, but we're going to do this in the way of the early explorers, what is referred to as unsupported and unassisted. So no assistance in forward motion. Everything we do is human power and no support from the outside, no airdrops or fuel drops or anything like that. Everything we need is going to go into our sleds. Our sleds are going to weigh around 110 kilos, 230 pounds, and we'll pull these for almost 1,000 kilometers to the South Pole. The average temperature is going to be in around the -30 range. When you add in the wind chill, -60 is a pretty normal day in Antarctica. We're battling constant headwinds. The katabatic winds come out of the South Pole, and so we need to travel into these winds. Sometimes they're just light winds, other times they're like really strong hurricane winds, but we have to travel into the wind the whole time to get to the South Pole. We're going to struggle over some of the most hostile ground on the planet. We're going to lose 10 to 20% of our body weight to this huge caloric burn. You can't eat enough food to replace the energy that you're putting out during the day. We're going to suffer physically, mentally, and emotionally, but somehow we have to enjoy it. We have to enjoy the suffering so that we can keep ourselves focused and positive on the way towards the pole. This is a photo of my supplies, getting ready to leave home. Everything I'm going to need to survive for 50 days in Antarctica. Weight counts, every ounce counts, because we're pulling everything in our sleds. And this is just my basic, clothing and sleeping system here. We're going to put our tent and our food and our fuel on top of this. So you want your sled to be as light as possible. So for 50 days of travel, we take 2 pairs of socks and 2 pairs of underwear. You cut your toothbrush in half. You want to minimize the amount of weight that you're pulling along the way, because every ounce counts. Then you need to start training. This goes back to that saying that you need to be willing to do what others are not willing to do. You have to mimic the type of activity you're going to be doing as best as possible. And so I got a couple of big old truck tires, hooked them onto my harness, and pulled those around my neighborhood. I think a lot of my neighbors thought I had lost my mind or was maybe a bit obsessive compulsive over fitness. But this is what you have to do if you need to get your body in shape for an expedition such as this. We're going to board this plane in Punta Arenas, Chile. It's a specially designed Russian military cargo jet that is designed for off-runway landings. It's about a 4.5-hour flight from Chile down to Antarctica. We land on this glacial runway. There's no airports in Antarctica, so we land on this blue ice runway. You could literally put on skates and skate on this. You can't land a plane like this in snow because it will sink, so you land on ice. This runway here, this glacier that we land on, is 2 kilometers thick, 2,000 meters of ice. The mountains that you see in the background are actually quite large mountains, but they're mostly covered by snow and ice. Antarctica has the highest average elevation of any continent on our planet, is one of the most mountainous continents on our planet. There's a short video here that will give you your first introduction to Antarctica. 360-degree view. It's about -30 degrees, a 30-knot wind at this point. I've been to Antarctica 4 times now, and every time it just astounds me. It's just amazing when you step off that plane onto the ice and just understanding that we're standing on a glacier that's 2 kilometers thick at this point. We get picked up at the landing runway and taken over to a main base. And then from here, we're going to spend a couple of days getting our supplies ready, and then we'll get dropped off to our starting point. We board this specially equipped, ski-equipped Twin Otter that will take us from the main base to our drop-off location, and then we will be on our own from there. So to achieve the outrageous, you need to know what's in it for me. Why are you there? And we look at those external factors and we look at internal factors at the same time. So we get dropped off by ski plane. We load up our sleds, put on our skis, and start head south. And our plan is we're going to keep going south until we start to go north. Here is your typical day skiing towards the South Pole. You know, a lot of people have been referring to this last year, you know, our lives within COVID as Groundhog Day. Antarctica is totally Groundhog Day. Every day is the same. The views are the same. The sun never sets. We're there in the Antarctic summer. The sun just rotates around the sky, and you just travel in a straight line heading south towards the pole. We set up our camp every night, and then we continue the next day. So you need to know why you're doing it. If you don't know why you're doing it, then it's really easy to quit. The first time things get tough, you're going to quit. And we look at external factors, motivators, internal factors, inspiration. Now, the external factors, these motivators, this is the reward or the punishment. This is the carrot or the stick. We use these all the time in our lives. These are important, but they only go so far. Then there's the inspiration factors. These are things that come from within. You're doing it because you want to do it. It doesn't matter about reward or punishment. You will, work until you're tired. You'll do whatever it takes to get there because inspiration is infinitely powerful. We often say that motivation is momentary, but inspiration can last a lifetime. Motivation comes from outside. Inspiration comes from inside. Motivation pushes you, but inspiration pulls you along the way. So for me, I need to know why I'm there. Why am I doing this? So from the motivation side, recognition, there could be some awards or different recognition along the way. Magazine articles, get some speaking engagements, maybe some gear from sponsors, learning more about teams and leadership, things that I can apply to my business. But then on the inspiration side, it's about personal challenge. What am I capable of doing? How far can I push myself mentally, physically, emotionally? It's to do something that few people have ever done before, to learn and grow as a person, to, push myself into experience this hardship and suffering. And people might be wondering, why do you want to put yourself into a position of hardship, of suffering? But that's where we really learn so much about ourselves. And we also learn to appreciate the rest of things that we have in our lives when we are brought down to the very basics, and we get the opportunity to travel to new lands and new worlds. So point number 3, to achieve the outrageous, you need to have a routine, schedules, roles, responsibilities. If you don't have this, things get missed, things get forgotten, the ball gets dropped. And that gets you into a very, very dangerous position when you're in a place such as Antarctica. So every morning we would wake up and we would get ready to travel towards the South Pole. This is a video I shot at about 7:30 in the morning. You can hear that constant katabatic wind blowing, and we're getting ready to head out towards the pole for the day. get up, get out of our tents, load up our sleds, and start to ski. We're going to ski for 8 hours, taking breaks along the way. Every hour, we'll take a 10-minute break. We'll get to camp, set up our tents, and we'll rest and eat. Then we have a team meeting to look at where did we travel today, what's our plan for the next day. But we have a very specific routine that we do every day, and we have roles and responsibilities every day. So every morning we wake up, start the stove, and I'm in charge of the stove. The only way to get water in Antarctica is by melting snow. We start to pack up our sleeping bags, start to get dressed for the day. We're going to eat breakfast and finish getting dressed. I'm going to pack up the inside of the tent where my tent mate will get outside, start to dig out our gear, remove the tent anchors. Then I'll get outside of the tent, and together we take the tent down. We need 2 people to take the tent down and to put the tent up, because you can't let go of the tent. It'll get taken away by the wind, and then that will put you in a very, very dangerous position here. We're now going to start to ski. We ski for 1 hour and take a 10-minute break. Ski for 1 hour, take a 10-minute break. And we don't stop for lunch. You don't stop for an extended period because you get too cold, you'll get hypothermia. So we just stop for 10 minutes. We're going to do this 8 times through the day. Each 1 hour ski is what we call a ski block. Each person is going to lead for 2 ski blocks. The leader navigates, they set the pace, they select the route, they keep track of our ski and our break time. We're going to rotate every 2 hours. So if I'm in the lead after 2 hours, I go to the back. The lead position is the hardest position. The tail position is the easiest position. So after you've done all the work up front, you go to the back so that you can just kind of, relax at that point. Once we get to camp, we've got this specific rules for setting up the tent and unpacking the sled so that everything goes smoothly. Nothing gets lost, nothing gets blown away, nothing gets broken. So we have very, very specific roles and responsibilities that make us able to be able to do what we do in a safe manner, and it plays into everyday life, back home as well. These routines keep us efficient, and we can accomplish way more when we have these clear roles and responsibilities. Emotional intelligence is critical here. Emotional intelligence is how we interact with others, how we deal with our personal emotions, how we deal with stress and pressure, how we overcome challenges. I often say that to do something like this, you have to be physically fit. But fitness is just your ticket to the door. Once you get there, the difference between success and failure, it's all up here. It's all mental. It's all emotional here. So we've got lots of challenges that we're facing. We're pulling these sleds for 8 to 10 hours a day in very, very cold conditions. We've got this caloric deficit. You're always hungry. You can't eat enough food to replace the calories that you're burning. We're dragging our sleds through these deep, soft snow. Kind of feels like you're pulling an anchor across the sand. Any existing conditions really get aggravated in this environment. I figured that we were taking about 50,000 steps a day. So if you have a bad ankle, a bad knee, or a bad hip, they really start to ache and become painful. We're dealing with all kinds of other challenges, from frostbite, sunburn, windburn, polar thaw, exhaustion, and then sastrugi. Now, sastrugi is a Russian word, and what it stands for is these parallel wave-like ridges on the snow caused by the blowing of the wind. And this is especially in polar regions. So this is a short video where I talk a bit about sastrugi and the challenges that it gives us.
So it's day 9, November 25th. Working our way towards the South Pole. We've got a pretty flat light day today, which makes navigation a little tougher. And for the last 4 days, we've been going through this sastrugi field. Sastrugi is a Russian word, and it's basically these big wind-formed ridges in the snow that are rock hard, like the ripples on the bottom of an ocean. And right now we're going diagonal across them. And so you'll be skiing along, and all of a sudden you can hit this wall, 6 inches, a foot, 2 feet, 3 feet, 4 feet tall, and can make it difficult to pull your sled over it, as I just did there. And sometimes you can even fall off the other side. We've had a couple of wipeouts, and sometimes your sled gets stuck in such a big hole that you need help to pull it out.
So this is the surface of Antarctica. It's not like a sidewalk. You can imagine pulling a 230-pound sled across this surface. Every time you hit one of these ridges, it stops, it gets stuck, and you have to pull it up and over. And it's just endless. From the mental and emotional strain here, it never stops. It just seems like you get beat all day long, pulling your sled across these heavy ridges and sometimes even dropping into these big pits. At night, because of the constant wind, we have drifting snow and everything gets buried. Anything left outside the tent gets buried at night. So you have to make sure you know where everything is. There's a place for everything. So in the morning, you can grab your shovel and dig it all out, load up your sled, and get ready to go. We have these big fur ruffs that we wear on our hoods to break the wind so that you don't get frostbite on your face. And anytime you're outside of your tent, you wear goggles to protect your eyes, and we sew fabric on the bottom of our goggles to protect our faces, again, from sunburn, windburn, and frostbite. So emotional intelligence is really, really important here to help you to deal with the challenges that you face. You need to have focus on stress tolerance and flexibility. You need to build those interpersonal relationships. All of these aspects really contribute to the success that we have in our personal lives, our professional lives, and in an expedition environment like this. A higher emotional intelligence allows you to deal with the challenges that you're presented and to be able to, achieve your goal. Now, number 5, you got to find the fun. Some of you may be thinking as you're watching this presentation that it doesn't really sound like a whole lot of fun. And in many cases, it wasn't fun, but you have to find the fun. This is what we're doing all day, every day. And it can be very monotonous, very physically demanding, emotionally challenging. So every time when we got to camp, before we would set up our tents, we would get together and we had a little game where everybody would guess how far did we think we traveled today. And then we'd pull out our GPS and see who got the closest. And it was kind of a bit of a challenge here. We would talk about what did you see today that was beautiful? What did you see today that was funny, that was fun? Really focusing on the positive, because it's really easy to get stuck into that negative loop. So you have to force yourself to focus on the positive sometimes. We would celebrate, we had Christmas in Antarctica. We were there in the Antarctic summer, which takes us over Christmas. A pretty lonely place to spend Christmas Day in Antarctica. So we allowed ourselves the weight of one Christmas ornament. You can see it on the top of our tent there. And we bought Christmas presents for each other, mostly consisting of chocolate. So you have to find the fun in these very challenging times. You got to build in time for recovery. If you are burning out, you're no good to yourself, you're no good to your team. And you need to make sure you build in that time for recovery. There seems to be, a mentality these days that people want to see how far they can push themselves. People work, 50, 60, 70 hours a week. People work on the weekends. They work on the evenings. They don't take their holidays. But it's not the best way to go about doing it, because you're going to burn yourself out. Different people have got different levels here. But if you burn out, you're no good to yourself. So we are fighting against this mental breakdown, physical breakdowns, and emotional breakdowns. One of the physical things that happens to us is something called polar thigh. Polar thigh is a condition that you only get on these extended polar expeditions. And what happens is, as your legs are brushing together through this constant movement, your clothing is abraiding, weakening your skin a little bit. Then you have this constant minus 30, minus 40 degree wind blowing against your skin, and you get these wounds. They're kind of like frostbite, but not exactly frostbite. You get a blister, and then the blister pops and it can start to dig into your leg. You have to be really careful, taking care of yourself, making sure that you're keeping your wounds clean, making sure you're staying hydrated, because if it gets too bad, you can get evacuated here. Your expedition is over. The next picture I'm going to show you is of a very severe case of polar thigh. If you're squeamish at all, you won't want to look at this. But if you don't take care of yourself, this is what can happen to your leg. And this is a friend of mine who had a very bad case of polar thigh. She's had to have several plastic surgeries and skin grafts to try to repair her leg. So you really have to be focused on resting, recovering, keeping yourself healthy, attending to any wounds that you have so that you can maintain your strength so that you continue to perform. So every night we're going to get into our tent. We're going to relax as much as we can. We're going to eat and drink and try to replenish all of the calories that we use during the day. We need to eat a very high calorie diet here. We had these little Melba toasts that we would cover with olive oil and butter, and then have some high fat salamis. Everything we did, we tried to add calories to whenever possible. We had these huge bowls of dehydrated foods. And eating Antarctica, sure, we're all going to eat for pleasure because we enjoy it a bit, but eating Antarctica is a job. You do it because you have to. The first half of your dinner, you kind of enjoy that. But then the second half, you have to force yourself to eat it. Your body is done. You don't want to eat anymore, but you have to empty your bowl. And so you just keep shoveling food into your mouth so that you can get as many calories into your body as possible. And then as we travel for day after day after day after day, making our way towards the South Pole, you have to celebrate. You can't just wait until you achieve your goal, until you get to your endpoint to celebrate, because you need the motivation, the inspiration to keep you going along the way. So we celebrated all the time. Every time we got to camp, every time something special happened, we celebrated as a team. So at the end of every ski block, we would ski for an hour and take a short break, and we'd have a little cheers, a little celebration, usually with a chunk of chocolate at this point. Halfway through the day, we had our salami and cheese break. We had little chunks of salami and cheese that we had cut up before the expedition. They were in the bottom of our sled, frozen solid like a hockey puck. But every morning we'd pull one out, put it into our jackets. After about 4 hours of skiing, our body heat had warmed it up enough that we could take a bite without breaking our teeth. And so that was our, halfway through the day salami and cheese break. The end of every day, we would have a snack and a little celebration of chocolate. I think you can see a bit of a theme here. Chocolate plays into a lot of our celebrations through the day. Every time we crossed the line of latitude, we got dropped off around 78 degrees. And if you're not familiar with geography, lines of latitude and how it works, the equator is 0. And then it goes 1 degree, 2 degrees, 3 degrees, 4 degrees south until we get to 90 degrees, which is the South Pole. The North Pole is 90 degrees north. Every degree of latitude is 60 nautical miles, which is about 120 kilometers. So we knew, there's no lines painted on the snow or anything like that, but we know roughly when we're going to cross a line of latitude, and we would stop and have a celebration. Halfway through, we celebrated, and this was our one and only turn. We were basically doing a straight shot to the South Pole, but we had to move around one ridge of mountains, and we had to make one turn. So I shot video of our one and only turn in Antarctica.
Okay, here we are. It's December the 5th, and we're making a big turn. Do the turn, Ryan.
163 down to 138 degrees.
163 to 138 degrees. Here goes the turn. A big moment in Antarctic history. Now a straight shot to the pole, 299 nautical miles. Let's do it.
So we continued working our way, and finally we're almost at the South Pole. There's a sign. We can see this sign off in the distance. It's kind of like the Canadian prairies, right? You can see for days, and we see this sign and we're like, we're almost there, we're almost there, we're almost there. And we get to this sign and it says, congratulations, you are almost at the South Pole. So it was a huge letdown. We thought we were there, but we weren't quite there yet. And the reason why they have this sign is there's a lot of scientific research going on in the South Pole, and they don't want us to bumble across any of their research. And so they have us navigate to a specific spot, and then there's a flagged route that takes us on a safe path to the South Pole. And then we finally get to the South Pole, celebrate again with some chocolate, but now we actually get a little bit of beer to celebrate at the same time. The neat thing about the South Pole is there actually is a pole at the South Pole. And we were there, we arrived at the South Pole, on December 31st. So we were there for New Year's Eve. Pretty cool place to be in Antarctica for New Year's Eve. All the lines of longitude meet at this point. So technically, as you walk around this pole, you are in every single time zone in the world at one time. You can just walk around the Earth. And so we could celebrate New Year's Eve multiple times as we walked around this pole. So after 43 days, 3 hours and 30 minutes, we made it to the South Pole. And it was an extremely challenging expedition, but you can see we're all smiling. Everybody's happy. We had worked well individually. We had worked well as a team. We had dug deep to accomplish something that very few people have ever done. But to be fair, maybe it's something that very few people actually want to do anyways. So it was a great opportunity for me to learn about myself, to explore, and to challenge myself, and to take a lot from this as well. So, again, I'm boiling down my experience into these 7 elements that I really think helped us to achieve the outrageous. Different people will take different things from this presentation or from this experience, but I think this is something that really helped me to get to where I wanted to go. So I just want to wrap it up there, and I think we've got a few minutes for some questions at this point. I've seen there's been some questions popping into the chat feature, but if anybody's got any questions about my experience in Antarctica and what I took from it, then just please ask away, pop your message into chat, and then we'll take them one by one.
Wow, Scott, that was a fantastic presentation. And I have to say, I absolutely love that sign of almost there. It made me chuckle. Yeah. So as you said, we do have some great questions in here, and so I'll just read them off. So one of the first questions that came in was, were you ever scared at all during any point of this trek?
Not on this expedition itself. And people often, when I talk about my expedition to Mount Everest, people often ask me that question as well. And I always say, no, I wasn't scared at any point, because I felt I had prepared very well for this. I had been climbing mountaineering for over 15 years before I went to Mount Everest. I had been expeditioning for about 18 years before I went to Antarctica for the first time. And so I had prepared and tested and trained myself for many, many, many years, starting small. In Thunder Bay is where I learned to rock climb. And then we started to ice climb in Thunder Bay, great winter season. And then I started to do some small mountains. And then you would go, to the Canadian Rockies, you go to Mexico, to Ecuador, to Peru, to Argentina, the Alps, and you're constantly exposing yourself to bigger and harder elements. And you're learning a lot along the way. So I felt that by the time I got to Mount Everest, by the time I got to Antarctica, I could handle just about anything that the environment could throw at me. And so I felt very confident in my skills, and I could handle, all whatever challenges were along the way. So, was I unhappy at times? Sure. Was I stressed out at times? Absolutely. But was I scared? No, I wasn't scared, because I felt I had prepared really well for the expedition.
Fantastic to hear. Another person asked, did you lose anything?
Did I lose anything? Well, the only thing I lost was the day that we were flying from Chile to Antarctica. I had my phone stolen, which, there's no cell service down there, but my phone had my audio books. My phone had my family pictures on it. My phone had all my music on it. The phone was my journal, and it got stolen. So that was the only thing I lost, but it was a pretty big blow to lose that before I'm heading to Antarctica for almost 2 months.
So what did you do to entertain yourself without audiobooks or music?
I thought about putting this presentation together.
Well, great use of your time, because it's been a fantastic presentation.
You do have a lot of time inside your own head to think about things. So
hopefully one of your partners shared their music with you.
Yeah.
And another person asked, how difficult was sleeping, and how many hours would you average?
Sleeping, the one of the challenges in Antarctica is because the sun is constantly up, the sun never sets. It kind of plays with our circadian rhythms. We're used to sleeping when it's dark, and it never gets dark. So it takes you several days for your body to adjust to this constant sunlight. And it is a little bit harder to sleep there. And we would, we would try to get 8 hours of sleep a night. Sometimes we would, sometimes we wouldn't. But the interesting thing is that you never seem to get tired. It's weird. When the sun is always up, you don't get tired. Like we could be doing something, we'd be sitting around talking, and all of a sudden somebody looks at their watch and you're like, holy, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. We should go to sleep. I was like, you don't even realize how late it is because the sun is always up, and I don't anyways really feel that tired, even if you have less sleep than what you normally have. But it does make it a little bit challenging at first to fall asleep.
I can imagine. Someone else is curious. How do you go about getting the funding to do these kind of epic adventures?
For me, it's all self-funded. I work hard to save my money. I have done expeditions with sponsors in the past. Sponsorship is difficult to get. Getting equipment is no big deal. I can get that no problem, but getting money is hard. People are looking for a lot of return on their investment, as they should, whether that be media or different types of promotions here, and so it's difficult to come by. And then for me, I always think, if I am going on a sponsored expedition, that I'm beholden to somebody else, and it takes my focus away from what I need to be focusing on, and I'm focusing on other things, getting photographs or doing interviews or something like that, and I can't quite dedicate all of my energy and effort to the expedition itself. So whenever possible, I always try to keep it self-funded, and you do things as economically as you can, and you just have to save your money and make it happen.
Understandable. Someone was wondering, what's your favorite gadget that you take on these trips?
Favorite gadget? That's it. I've been asked hundreds of questions over the years, but I don't think I've ever been asked that question. Favorite? Why don't you give me another one? Let me keep thinking
Okay.
about that for a minute.
Did you always have ambitions to go on these kind of expeditions?
I'm not one of those people who, there's some people that say, from the time I was 4 years old, I knew I wanted to climb Mount Everest. I wasn't that. I didn't really even know that those types of things existed when I was young. And then when I did know that they were happening, it was like, well, that's not for me. Like, I can't do that. That's for, somebody else who's got something that I don't have. And again, it wasn't until I got to Lakehead and started to climb that it opened up my whole world view. And after a while, I kind of thought, well, maybe this is something that I am capable of doing, and just made it happen. So it took a little while to, I guess, build that self-confidence to believe that it's something that, I can do. Yeah. So yeah, it was, I don't know. Yeah, there you go.
Makes sense. It's hard, as you're right. Like, I don't think any 4-year-old really thinks that way, right?
No.
And speaking of Lakehead, what was your favorite memory of the Lakehead Outdoor Rec program?
Well, for me, I come from a small town, and I'm more introverted in nature, and so I really like the kind of the personal feel of Lakehead. Classes were smaller than what at some universities are. I got to know all of my professors. We would go climbing together on the weekends and go canoeing. I got to know everybody in my class. So I really liked that, personal feeling part of it. It just made me feel much more comfortable and allowed me to excel. I was not the greatest high school student, but in the Lakehead environment, I really excelled, and was, one of the better students in my class, became a TA, and then, went on to get my master's and teach in university and do all kinds of other things. And I think the environment at Lakehead really allowed me to accomplish that.
Fantastic. I have another question. Who is the oldest person who has ever made this trip to the South Pole?
I don't specifically know the answer to that. I know there's all kinds of statistics on the internet. Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I know, for Mount Everest, I think the oldest person to climb Everest is like 82 or 83 right now, somewhere in that range. So pretty amazing. Like I think I'll be happy if I'm just walking up steps at that age. To climb Mount Everest would be amazing at that age. And I don't know, Antarctica to do this journey is probably somebody in their 60s or 70s, but I'm not 100% sure on that one.
This question made me laugh, and I was thinking about this when we were talking. How long before you were willing to try salami, cheese, and chocolate again after this expedition?
Well, I really like chocolate, salami, and cheese, so it didn't curb my enthusiasm for any of those foods.
That's good.
Oat,
And
oatmeal is a different story.
yeah. um, how long prior to how long prior did you start preparing for this trip?
Well, there's many ways you can answer that question. I had been preparing for 15 years in training and learning to get ready to do this. I didn't know that was what I was planning on doing when I started, but it just kind of is this evolution along the way. I always keep myself at a certain level of fitness, and then when you get ready for one of these trips, you bump it up. And this was I guess it was probably about 4 or 5 months that before the trip that you start to accelerate your fitness and really focus in on specific types of fitness that are going to be necessary for the expedition itself.
I imagine you got some pretty strange looks walking around with those two tires tied to your waist.
Yeah.
And how much weight did you lose, from the start of the expedition to afterwards?
I don't know exactly how much weight I lost because we don't have any scales down there. And once we are finished the expedition, we're still in Antarctica for a few days before we can fly back to Chile. And at the main base in Antarctica, they've got a wonderful chef and lots of food. And you eat a lot after you've been eating dehydrated food and oatmeal for 50 days. You're pretty excited to have a great home cooked meal, and so you overeat perhaps. And so I think by the time you actually get home, you probably put on most of the weight that you had lost. But I suspect it was probably somewhere in the 15-pound range, something like that.
And what was the food that was served to you when you first got there?
Trying to think, we had a great New Year's Eve dinner with the South Pole base manager, and we had beef tenderloin, roasted potatoes, creamed spinach. I can't remember what else was there, and a chocolate cake for dessert. So it was pretty nice.
Sounds lovely. Did you see any wildlife at all?
No. Antarctica has a lot of wildlife, but it's all centered around the coast, and more so like where the ice and the ocean meet. That's where you're going to get seals and different bird life and different things. Once you get inland, there's nothing. Antarctica is very sterile. There are no animals in the interior. There's no plants in the interior. There's no molds. It's a complete sterile environment, and so we didn't see any animals or any people on our journey to the South Pole.
Didn't know that. And how would you suggest going about identifying those personal aspirations?
For me, it was easy. I think once I discovered climbing and adventure expeditions, you get into this environment and you're talking to other people and you're reading books and articles and new ideas just start to crop up. So I got lucky because I was able to discover my passion. And so I think the first step is to discover what your passion is. And once you know what your passion is, then you can start to find those, unique challenges or goals that you have that fit within that environment, whatever that happens to be.
Were you totally alone, or did you have any way to or essentially, how did you have any communication to contact anyone if there was an emergency?
Yeah, so we did have a satellite phone, and so once a week or about that, I would call home, and we could actually even send text messages. The whole satellite communications. When I first started expeditioning, we didn't have that. You would just go off into the wilds and come back again, 30 days later or whatever. And we had no communication with the outside world. Today, communication is pretty easy, even in Antarctica. And it is a double-edged sword, because it is great to be able to keep connected with home and to talk to people, but it can also distract you and make it more challenging for you if you are having a really hard day, and then you talk to your family at home. You can get really homesick, and it can make it difficult for you to stay focused. And there are people who have quit expeditions just because it was too overwhelming for them, and they got homesick, and then they talked to their family and they're like, I'm out of here. So it's a double-edged sword. It's amazing that we have these satellite communications today, but it can also distract you and pull you away from the focus that you need on the expedition.
Speaking of talking to people, were you and your team mic'd up so that you could talk while you were trekking?
No, we virtually didn't talk to each other all day long. You're in a straight line, the wind is howling, so you can't hear each other, you can't talk. In our 10-minute breaks, you had to, eat, drink, adjust your clothing, fix anything that needed attention, go to the bathroom. So there was very little time to talk during that time. And so it was only be in the evenings where we would be inside the tent, they would have an opportunity to talk, but we couldn't speak to each other through the day. And so that's where, you're really inside your own head. And that can be one of the hardest parts, especially for about the first 7 days, is the mental isolation. Just nothing to occupy your mind. And so you have to figure out, is this some type of a meditative state that you need to get your mind into, a free flow mental state? Do you need to concentrate on things? Everybody has different strategies that allows them to get through this, very isolated time. And you have to figure out what works for you.
And I imagine you can't really listen to your iPod or, that would freeze. Why did you choose Lakehead for your studies?
After I finished high school, like I said, I was not a very good student, and I couldn't get into anything at that point. And I took a couple of years off. And then I went back. I applied to Lakehead as a mature student, which allowed me to get in, because I couldn't get in with my high school marks. And I chose Lakehead. It was a friend of mine came back at Christmas one year and talked to me about this outdoor recreation program that they were doing in Lakehead. And I thought that sounded pretty amazing. I hadn't really done any research into it, but I just knew that what I was doing and working in retail didn't really have much of a future for me. And I knew I needed to do something else. And the outdoor rec program sounded great. I loved the idea that it was far away from home. For me, it's a bit of an adventure, and being up in the north really appealed to me as well. So I think those are, some of the factors that guided me towards Lakehead. And I just got really lucky that it was such a great fit for me. I was kind of like a duck in water when I got there.
That's fantastic. Have there been any famous people that you've coached or led?
Well, I've, there's been various different, celebrities in the climbing world or the polar adventure world that I've, had the opportunity to go on expeditions with. A neat story is, I guess probably about 3 or 4 years ago now, I led a trek to Mount Everest Base Camp, and we were actually taking a group of ill and injured Canadian soldiers through a charity called True Patriot Love. And one of my co-guides was Sir Edmund Hillary's son, Peter Hillary. And so it was pretty neat to be there with Peter Hillary and to hear Peter's stories of his father, and to read from Edmund Hillary's journal as he was climbing Everest in 1954. So spending time with Peter Hillary was, pretty special for me.
That's really cool. What type of camera equipment did you use that didn't freeze in those kind of temperatures?
Yeah, you have to be careful with your batteries for sure. I had a GoPro with me in Antarctica, but it would freeze all the time. And so you're very limited in what you can have. And I've got a small point and shoot digital camera that just kind of fits into a chest pocket, so my body heat can keep it a little bit warm. And you just pull it out, take a quick picture, and put it back. But you do have to be really careful because they do freeze very fast. And you'll notice when a lot of people, they look at my pictures and they're like, wow, it's so beautiful there. The sun is always shining. It's a beautiful day. And the thing is, you only take pictures when it's nice out, because when it's bad, you don't want to get frostbite on your fingers pulling out your camera, and it's just too dangerous and too much effort to take pictures during difficult times and bad weather. So all your pictures look like it's a pretty nice day.
I guess that's good for, promoting it too, right? Have you ever hallucinated, or any of those kind of like situations happened, just staring at, essentially the same thing over and over again?
No, not for me. Sometimes people will experience some challenges with altitude, like on Mount Everest, which I haven't had that specifically. And here, no, I guess I've always been able to keep myself focused and concentrate enough that I haven't had any of those issues.
That's fantastic. And I think we'll do our last question. What is your favorite memory on campus at Lakehead?
Favorite memory on campus. Let's see here. We had some great times in the pub. One of the things I remember is seeing the Bare Naked Ladies for the first time, as they were, they were not a big band at that point. Nobody really knew the Bare Naked Ladies, and they were traveling across Canada and playing a couple of nights at Lakehead in the pub. And so that was pretty neat to go and see the Bare Naked Ladies. But then just, everything, I think just interacting with my fellow students and with my professors, it was just a very fun and friendly atmosphere.
Wonderful. Well, Scott, thank you so much for your time today and sharing your story with us on behalf of the Alumni Association. We really appreciate it. And just thank you so much. And thank you for everyone for joining us today. We will be sending out the presentation on our YouTube channel in a few days' time. So make sure that you keep an eye out for that. And thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Have a great rest of your day.